recording button showed up down bottom. We are recording now.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Brian, right? You having trouble with your audio? Yeah, because you're not coming through to us. Well, they were up until a minute ago. I'm not looking right now, but
We hear your half of the conversation, Paul. And we see Brian's half. It's sort of amusing.
yeah, I was talking to him on the phone.
Yeah, we can see because I can see him talking on the phone.
So he says he's probably going to have to go out and come back in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you went out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hearing him from your phone, so if all else fails, you could do that.
It's probably not the most fidelity.
No.
Does that work? Can you hear me now?
I don't think so. I'm hearing you on the phone, but I don't think I'm hearing you over the computer.
Correct.
Yeah. His video is working just fine. I could see him.
Yeah,
So it's not.
It must be a permissions thing or something.
Or a device thing. Maybe that headset doesn't work.
It's really weird because I was running a session an hour ago and I don't know what the heck difference it is. All right, let me try something else. I got to go to switch to a different audio source. I'll do that again. Exit.
I'll leave this phone so everybody can share what's going on.
Test 1, 2. All right, go back in.
Well, while we're waiting, here's the note well. Hopefully everybody here knows what the note well is. Please, if you don't, please read it and note. I say the slide sharing, it's nice, but it looks a little funny when you only got like 3 slides because they space the clicks for them all the way across the page.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Still not hearing you.
The Medico gave some advice in the chat to Brian, so if he wants to take a look at that.
Oh, let's see what did they say.
Okay. I give up on this. I go back to something else.
Apparently, Meet Echo gave you some advice in the chat.
Chat. I'm not looking at chat. Yeah, I'm doing that. I'm doing that. All right, one more thing.
Anybody have any bashing they want to do to the agenda? Didn't think so.
Hey, Paul. Hey, Paul, this is Alex. I just wanted to clarify. You said bashing?
Request changes to the agenda.
Oh, you got it. Thank you.
It's an IETF colloquialism.
How's that?
Bashing. Oh. Oh, you. Nope.
Hey, Brian.
All right. Oh, I'm here.
How is that?
That's better.
All right.
Yep, you're live now.
Okay. Sorry for the difficulty.
Okay. Well, we didn't have any bashing to do, so we haven't even run out of our bashing time. So I guess we didn't lose anything.
Yeah, that's fine.
Jonathan has agreed to take notes. And Eugene is going to do the jabber scribing. From past experience, there's probably nothing to do in jabber scribing here. Just keep an eye out. If somebody has something they want you to bring forward, do it. Otherwise, you're done. So, Brian, do you want to drive your own slides? You want me to drive them for you?
No, I'll drive them.
Okay. When I came on just 15 minutes before the session, your slides weren't uploadable, but I started to try to fix it. And then in the meantime, it looks like you did.
Now, why can't I? Oh, I know, because you need to give me why? No,
Yeah, I
that should work.
gotta
Stop.
here.
Right. Then I can start. And then there's this and share. There you go. You seen them?
Yep.
Okay. So I submitted an 05 draft before the cutoff. And I'm going to go over what I've done. You may have noticed that I submitted an 06 draft this morning. By the IETF rules, we have to consider the one that was available to you before the meeting started, before the cutoff. But what I'm talking about has been done in the 06 draft. But here's where we are. So all outstanding issues that I know of have been dealt with some exceptions that I'm going to cover on a later slide. Paul K. did submit some comments against the 05. I have made all of his suggested wording changes. I have fixed the registration text as he suggested. I did mess with the title. That was the title of 4522 was the dial around section, and I fixed that. I fixed two-stage dial around to specify that you use the front door number URI, which fixes his issue with that. And I did rework the text on telephone numbers so that it's clear that you use the syntax with no decorations. It's just the telephone number. It's plus country code and then the actual number with nothing else. I did fix the AOR thing a little differently than what this says. If you look at the text, I actually allowed SIP URIs that come from the configuration, which is what his comment was. And then I did split the configuration service into two pieces, one of which is unauthenticated and gets you the sign up and front door information, and the other gets you the per device or per user configuration. So again, all of that was Paul's comments. I believe I've covered all the issues. There are a couple of things to talk about in those, but I think everything is done in one way or another. So let me go to this. There are a couple of issues that require make sure that we're all okay with it. Single stage dial around. He raised the issue of that because the example had a route header in it, and it was confusing. And we went through it back and forth. He and I talked offline about it. And I just got rid of the route header. It goes back to the original notion that you say SIP : telephone number at whatever the dialer on provider domain is, and then if you and that tells you who the dialer on provider is. You send it to your default provider, because all calls go to your default provider always. There's no question about that. And it just tells him what to do. So that's the text in 06 does this, but I want to make sure that everyone's all right with that. So anybody wants to comment on that? It basically just uses TN at dialer on provider, and it doesn't have a route header. Any questions or comments on that?
I'm fine on this. The best I mean, it follows. I mean, doing it this way, if the provider follows normal SIP message processing behavior, it'll cause them to do the right thing. You know, they're going to receive the message. They're going to look at the request URI and say, "Well, it's not for me. I guess I'm supposed to proxy it."
Yeah, and that's what they'll do. Exactly. Okay, if there's no other comments, that's what 06 does, so that's done. Moving on. So these are the things that I didn't do that have been requested. So there was a request to drop support for IPv6. And I don't think we can get a document through the IETF that only allows IPv4. I mean, we would just not be, it would not get through the review processes. IPv6 is the standard. You can get a document with only IPv6 and not IPv4, but nobody really does that. So I really think that we need to require support for IPv6. We could add text, which is not in 06, that provides a little bit of help in implementation, making it a little bit easier to implement. I did put in the suggestion that if you do IPv6 for media or IPv6 for signaling, you have to do it for media. That definitely makes the implementation simpler. So it's either one or the other, everything. But I don't think that it is reasonable to build an IPv4 only implementation. It's just, V6 is all there is in many networks now. And that's going to get increasingly true as we see people deploying 6 only networks.
Eugene, you have something to say?
Read the RFC draft regarding IPv4, IPv6. If I'm reading it correctly, the way that it's speaking to me is it's saying that the RU must support both. So if I as a provider only support one and my NAPTR record reflects that, then as a provider, I'm okay, right? Because the RU is supposed to do both. It'll recognize that, oh, well, they only support IPv4, therefore it's going to connect to me on IPv4.
No, I believe that it requires 6 for both. I'm going to look at the actual text.
I mean, if anything, I think that's backwards. I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume that the providers can get an IPv4 address, so that they shouldn't have any technical problem supporting both. The RU may be on a device that doesn't have a v4 address.
Yeah, that's the thing that we're most worried about. I'm looking for the text here. Where did I put it? Search for it.
Well, it's at the very end.
It just says implementations must support. It doesn't say RU. It's all implementations.
Okay, but where this document is for the RU, I guess my my understanding of this was that it's the RU.
No, it's the interface.
Both sides,
It's both sides.
unless specified otherwise.
Yeah, and there are sections that say the RU has to do something as opposed to the provider, but this is both. And again, there are networks that you can't get an IPv4 address anymore. It's just not possible at this point to require IPv4. It just doesn't work anymore.
I mean, the one thing that, yeah, I don't know how much to put in this document about it, but in terms of, you know, if you're going to do the signaling, you know, if you do the signaling one way, do the media the same way. I mean,
Yeah, that's there. That is in the 6th version.
The one exception to that I might bring up is if you use ICE to negotiate the media, then I think you're still free to offer candidates of both flavors. You know, if the signaling was V6 and you offer both V6 and V4, if the other side doesn't do, can't do V4, well, they'll just ignore those candidates and things will be okay. But I think in the case of ICE, you at least better offer candidates, you know, of the flavor that your signaling is.
Yeah. Well, so I'm willing to put that text in. That's right now the V6 text says the same version of IP must be used for both signaling and media of a call. So that doesn't support ICE allowing it to be different. I'm certainly willing to add that. I don't care that much about it. I'm okay with the restriction that you use both. That's the practical answer. It's really weird to do it the other way.
Yeah.
So I don't feel necessary to require the support for ICE, you know, where ICE candidates of both addresses are.
Yeah, I think a lot of
conceivable that the V4 path would be better or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of ICE stacks will probably generate, you know, every address they can find if you're using an off-the-shelf ICE stack, and
yeah,
you know what you get, you know, you don't really have a lot of control over what you get, and you don't care. So
right.
I think you don't want to require one flavor or the other because it's no point.
Okay.
If you're using ICE, but if you're not using ICE, yeah, I agree. Use the, you know, do whatever you think will work. You know, use the same thing as your signaling is using.
I mean, we can tweak the words.
Yeah, right. All right, we'll do that.
We think we understand what we're trying to get to.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments? Okay. I did leave context sync as is. It's just a simple, straightforward implementation. I'm willing to deal with the XCard JCard thing, but I really think we ought to do JCard. It's really a simple conversion if you've got one to convert to the other, since it's exactly the same data format and just a representation issue. But I'm willing. I'd be willing to go back and, you know, do it XCard. I've had some discussions with the folks who would, you know, there was this worry about the FCC, and I have a considered opinion that that's not an issue, that if the spec comes out saying JSON, that the FCC will allow that. That would have to get done, and, you know, you can never guarantee anything when it comes to regulations, so I wouldn't say that it's a done deal, but I have it on good authority that wouldn't be a problem. Anyone want to comment on that?
This is Isaac. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's JSON versus XML, right? I like newer stuff, so I'm all for JSON, but the problem is it's a simple, I mean, it's not quite a simple change because it has to be implemented on a lot of different platforms and systems. And we already have everything working as Xcard. So it's like, is it really worth all the work, the development effort to effectively get the same thing, right? Like you said, it's the same information, same data. So why require all the providers and backend systems and everything else to do a whole bunch of work to implement effectively the same thing that we already have? Right.
I mean, do you really use it for contact export? Is that what it's used for?
We're required to do that by the FCC.
Okay,
The
got it.
user reports their number from Z or Purple to
okay.
Sunset. They need to have
That's
the ability to get their contacts from the other
I got it.
provider.
I got it. Okay. I guess I'd forgotten that that's what the rule said. Well,
The
okay.
rules don't cover, sync, do they? They just cover
No.
transfer.
Yeah, but if you're going to do it one way, you should do it both ways. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree that there should not be a difference between those two. I'm willing to compromise on that. I don't feel that strongly about it, so I'm willing to make that be an X card. Is there someone who feels strongly the other way that really, really, really thinks it ought to be J card? We'll take that to the list, right? We don't want to make decisions.
Yeah.
There's still a bunch of people that we normally would hear from that are not here, so we'll take it to the list. But I'm thinking we'll compromise there. All right, I'm moving on. So there was a complaint about the WebRTC compatibility, and I wanted to remind you that what we're supporting is not WebRTC, but the media requirements of WebRTC, so that it would be possible to take a WebRTC browser client and connect it up to a provider that supported the RU interface using some server that would have to be built to do the job, that would generate SIP signaling one way and WebRTC the other way, but wouldn't require that you mush with the media. That's the idea, is that the signaling is completely different, but the media is the same, and it has the same SDP and the same specs for media. So that's all that we're doing. And we agreed a while ago to say, go ahead.
When you say it's the same, can you clarify that a little bit?
What I mean is that any WebRTC implementation that meets the minimum requirements of the RFCs, the browser can generate a set of media streams that the box that would go between a WebRTC client and a RU supporting VRS provider would only have to mess with signaling and would not have to decode and re-encode the video. That's the only thing it succeeds at doing. And there is one specific case where it actually does have to decode and re-encode the video, which is RTT, which for WebRTC is done over the WebRTC data channel, and our spec still says 4103. So you actually would have to re-encode the RTT, but you wouldn't have to do that for the audio and the video. And it also gives you a set of capabilities in the SDP that you have to support. So it's saying some things about what can be in the M and C lines that may be a little more than what is currently supported, but it's not a major difference. There are some improvements is the wrong word, but there's some capabilities that WebRTC introduced that aren't necessarily in the current implementations. But
Yeah, so the concern, the problem it creates for us at least is that, so I think the idea is that we had to support a RU client, a WebRTC based RU client. I think that's the basic idea, right?
well, you have to support someone else doing a conversion between WebRTC and the RU interface, where that conversion doesn't include mucking around with the media other than RTT. You aren't responsible for dealing with WebRTC signaling. You aren't responsible for that server that has to do the munging of the signaling. You aren't responsible for dealing with the RTT issue. You are the only thing this is doing is adding additional media requirements.
Yeah, so WebRTC doesn't even do signaling, right? I'll turn my camera on here. But it does have a lot of enhanced media capabilities. I mean, WebRTC is all about media specifically.
Yes.
There are specific things, specific requirements it has, like you
Yes.
must use GTLS for media, right?
Yes.
Which is a great thing, right? We all agree that encryption, well, within the realms of affecting video quality on older devices is a good thing. But there are specific things it does with like NAC and sync and that are things that you do have to support. If you want to send video from an interpreter video phone that's not doing WebRTC to a WebRTC client, it's not as simple as sending the media. There are a lot of specific things that WebRTC does and requires that you have to support to get usable video for ASL.
Well, yes, but it's still an offer answer, right? I mean, you're saying that
WebRTC doesn't even do signaling. There's no signaling.
I understand, and we acknowledge that. We're only talking about what can be in the SDP, and therefore what can be in the media stream. Has nothing to do with signaling. It is only to do with what can be in the SDP and correspondingly what can be in the media stream. That's it. There is no more than that. But that is doing things that is beyond what a typical VRS device currently does. Let me give you an example. It requires support for multiple video streams, right? Now, that's typically the server that's making that decision, and if you don't offer that isn't gonna change anything. And you typically don't have multiple cameras, so that doesn't usually go the other way. But that's a typical thing that you might have to that is a difference. It probably is a difference that matters to you, but it is a difference. There are probably others that do, but the one thing I have to
codec parameters for potential
codec parameters. That's correct. There are codec parameter differences. There was a strong suggestion when we created this work group that this capability be provided. It isn't a hard requirement because nobody knew what problems we would uncover, but it was part of the negotiation to get this work group done. Was that we tried to maintain compatibility with WebRTC, being the current best IETF recommendations on video devices. And I think that the argument of, well, it's extra work on the providers, we don't need it, is not going to be enough to get us over. If we found an issue that made compatibility either made implementation, meeting our goals impossible or, way too hard, then we could go along and say, well, look, there's this problem that we have completely different goals and we need different mechanisms to solve those goals, and we can't maintain the compatibility in this area. It isn't a hard requirement in the charter, but it is something that we're obligated to attempt to maintain. And so I'm trying to do that. And that's part of I'm carrying the torch of what's in the charter.
I mean, we haven't had a lot of comments from the providers on the mailing list.
Yeah, I'm not sure that WebRTC.
I kind of hear you, but I would ask that you write these, the concerns down in the most explicit possible way in terms of, is there something particular in the RTC web specs referenced that causes you difficulty, and why?
Yeah, we can get that additional detail. I don't have it on hand, so we need to consult with the team. We did raise the issue on the mailing list, I think almost a year ago from the last IETF meeting. So it's not like we have not expressed those concerns. I don't know why WebRTC was added. I don't think that came from any provider. I think
it came from it came from the area directors and other participants when we discussed the charter of the work group.
Who don't know anything about being a provider or the BRS provider profile that we've all agreed to, to adhere to ensure great compatibility, which has been very successful. And so at the very least, somebody should have referenced that and looked at the existing interface between providers, which which could be used by the RU even to go to the extreme. Go ahead.
Well, I'm wearing two hats, and I've got my editor hat and my chair hat. And my editor hat, I want the chairs to figure out how to solve this because the charter says do this, and the providers are saying don't do that. With my chair hat, changing hats, I'll repeat Paul's issue. We need specifics of why this is a problem. And we've already, we all do it this way and we want to keep doing it that way is probably something that's hard to get through the IETF, right? They have current best practice, which is the WebRTC spec. If you want to do something that's older than that, they usually say, well, look, we've done this before and we for various reasons, and I can tell you why, they think that old stuff is not appropriate anymore. They think that we should support their current best practice. And it is always difficult when you go to any new organization to work on some specification. There's a piece of institutional memory and process and expertise that you have to deal with, which doesn't always meet what your ideal situation. And, wherever you go, that's an issue. And here, that was one of the things we had to get through, that they wanted us to take current best practice into account. And if we couldn't do it, we have to have a reason for not doing it. And if we do, then we can, it isn't a hard requirement in the charter. The charter doesn't say you must, it says should. And so if we can come up with, well, this is the problem, and it have to be some kind of a technical problem, not a we don't want to do it kind of problem.
Can I interject?
Sure.
I recall the goal was that actually not so much to put requirements on providers, but rather to say we should design this the interface such that it's possible to implement a RU in a WebRTC environment. And I think that's, that what that means is not that, a RU can do anything that WebRTC can do, but rather that the person implementing the RU can, has to, configure WebRTC to do only the things that the interface supports. And so I think this is, and I think it sounds like from your description, this was achieved. And I don't think this is saying anything that other people have to go out of their way to support crazy things that WebRTC can do, but rather that, as long as it's possible to do what Brian said, that, without a transcoding gateway, write something where most of what the RU is doing is written it can run inside a browser, and then gateway in your cloud to something else. I think that's achieved, and I don't think this is a requirement on other providers anyway.
I mean, there are things that are in addition that would have to be supported that are beyond what the current provider interface specifies. But I don't think they're very significant. I mean, the biggest ones, I don't know if it's the biggest, but Opus is there. That's one thing. But there are a couple of details if you go through and look at the specs on what you can specify in the SDP offer, which is all we worry about, right? What comes in the offer is the part that if it's beyond what you're used to accepting, because if there's anything that came back in the answer, you can just not use it and no one would care. It'd be all fine.
The thing I would, that may bear scrutiny is, interoperability, like in an end-to-end case, with legacy devices, legacy RUs.
Yeah, I think that's something to be concerned about, and I recognize that.
Well, the way I just heard that was something like, well, it's really just optional. You don't have to do this. I mean, that's not the way I read it in the RU profile.
No. It's required that you support the SDP descriptions, which implies the underlying media mechanisms. The text is specific about what has to be supported. There's, it references specific RFCs and specific sections of those RFCs, and has a couple of exceptions.
You have Opus as one example, right? It's like,
one is an example, right? I mean, we made VP8 optional. That's the video spec.
There's definitely more than just Opus. There are specific like packet loss and flow control mechanisms.
I'm sure that's true.
You can go and get that more detailed list, but it's not as simple as a candidate in an SDP. You got to support.
No. I agree. I agree. It is not what's in the candidate. It's the actual mechanism. If it could appear in it as a candidate, then the mechanism that supports that has to be able to be dealt with, right? So I agree with you. It is not just what could be in an offer. It's the mechanisms that would support that are the hard part. I don't think it's that hard, but I do think that it is non-trivial.
So if you could spell out, Eugene and the other providers, if you can detail where you see interop issues, especially, I think, because that seems like the hard part to me. I mean, maybe there's something else, but then we'll have something tangible to focus on.
Yeah, and I could absolutely see statements that says, if the RU is attempting to connect to a device which is, a legacy device, then then the answer can would have restrictions that would limit what could be done. And I think that's fine. I would hope that if it was the other way, root to root, where it was WebRTC in both ends, that you wouldn't see much restriction that was imposed by the middle. But I mean, if we need to add text that says when conversing with a device that doesn't have this capability, whatever it is that we're the specific, and again, it'd have to be something where you couldn't have the right thing come back in the answer given the offer. Then I think then I think we would have an issue. Then we could write text that dealt with that specific. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I think we could certainly help do that. It definitely opens a can of worms. So there's just from experience and trying to support some of those WebRTC platforms, it's not simple and easy, and it's something you have to do on a lot of platforms, right? We have apps on iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, Linux, etc. It's touches a lot of.
You're correct, but that isn't the problem that this interface would engender, right? We're not asking you to build a WebRTC interface. We're asking you to deal with the media specifications.
To be interoperable with one.
Right, but that's
media has to work in both.
Media has to flow, correct.
Yeah, the media stuff is what I'm talking about. There's a lot of stuff there, from like NAC to synchronization between video and audio. But we can get that list. It's just a list of specific items that we're going to have to comb through. And come to resolution.
Well, please, that's how we'll make progress. Is get the points out there so we can work on them.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions or anything on that, Adam?
Time check. We got 18 minutes.
So MWI, go ahead.
Just another quick one on IPv6. So you want to say that we have to support both, or where did we kind of end up on that?
Yes, you have to support both. Effectively, it depends on the network that the RU is on.
Yeah, and so iOS is IPv6 only, basically.
Right.
But the way they do that is through use of NAT64, and there are some very specific RFCs that you have to support. You have to understand, that IPv6 address is really an IPv4 address, and there's a way I can convert it. So at the very least, I just want to call out that I don't think that's resolved. There's still some details we got to dig into there to say, what does that really mean to say that we're IPv6 compatible?
Happy to have some suggestions there.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what iOS does, but they're IPv6 only. I presume that all that v6, v4 stuff is in cases where they're compelled to somehow be able to talk to a v4 device. If with an implementation of this RU spec, they wouldn't have that constraint. And so I would hope that they can use IPv6 directly without special accommodations for conversion to v4.
Well, there are some specific things you have to support. Just for example, it uses DNS64. What DNS64 does is it says, go to, give me the IP address for Sorensen.com. And it gets an IPv4 address. And it's like, I can't use this. I need to convert this to an IPv6 address. And so it tries, they do a pretty good job of trying to make it transparent to the app. But when you get into SDP type stuff, and I want to tell the other client what my local IP address is, there's things you have to handle to understand, oh, okay, that's actually an IPv4 address. I need to convert it back. So NAT64, DNS64, there's some other RFCs we can call out.
I think that what you're talking about does not apply for the reasons that Paul suggests. If the only addresses you return, if you return quad A records for every resource, you can also return A records for resources. But if you return quad A records for resources, then you never do NAT64. You never need you never need to recognize that it's an IPv4 address. It's always an IPv6 address.
It looks like an IPv6 address, but it's really an IPv4 address hiding in an IPv6 address. And there's a very specific RFC about how to recognize that and convert it back and forth. And so like with ICE specifically, right, it's really mainly an issue with ICE. The benefit ICE provides is that if you and I are on the same local network, we can send video directly. But we both have to recognize that, oh, okay, we're both really on the same IPv4 address and have to use the same RFC and spec to convert back and forth to make sure those are interoperable.
Yeah, but you wouldn't. You'd be on the same IPv6 addresses. There is no 4 if both ends are 6.
Well, imagine 2 iOS devices. Yeah. I think we need to dig into that a little bit more.
But please do. Please do.
Yeah, you've clearly got some, real life experience here. So, if you can share it, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Yes. So the MWI thing is still there. Paul suggests it only needs to be required if the provider offers voicemail. I don't remember if I actually put that in. I may have put that into 6.
Is that anything we should? I mean, it would be simpler if we just plain required it. Are there any providers that don't offer video mail?
Yeah, when you say voicemail, I assume you mean video mail.
Video mail. Yes, I keep making that mistake. I apologize. It's my stupidity. It's all video mail. We don't care about voicemail. We only care about video mail.
Yeah, so one point there was that video mail is an optional feature from the FCC.
Yes. So, right. That's why we made that suggestion.
I mean, the FCC makes it optional, right?
Right.
In practice, is that of any consequence? Do all providers provide it?
We do, but we don't use. So when you say MWI support, to me that implies a specific protocol. We use go ahead.
The only thing it requires is the protocol, the mechanism that lets the device know that mail is waiting. That's it. Just that. And then there's
once you discover that, there's an entry in the config that's a URL you can establish a call to retrieve the video mail.
Yeah, but that's a configuration. It's only a URI and how it works or anything else. It could be an HTTPS URI. We don't say what it does.
Well, except that the RU needs to know what to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, we probably have to say more than that is a point that I probably glossed over. The RU needs to know what to do with it. Well, all right. So I've been too glib with that.
Yeah. I mean, this issue.
So the MWI is just the notification that mail is waiting. That's it. There's nothing else.
Yeah, we use a different method, right? We use we use push notifications on iOS because it works better. So that is something new we have to go create and support as a result of that. For a feature that's not required by the FCC. So that's
Yeah, but it becomes proprietary, right? You can't build a non-proprietary interface, the RU thing, and get mail indication without some standard interface,
We'll get
right?
the mail.
Right. You're right,
So-
but it makes it proprietary, and that's wouldn't meet the requirements.
well, but again, it's an optional feature, right? So
I'm willing to say that if you don't implement video mail, then you certainly don't have to implement MWI. Right.
yeah, well, we all implement video now, so that's,
Right. So
that's saying-
I understand that.
we're not
That
gonna-
was Paul. Yeah.
But it doesn't really work to say, well, you implement a proprietary video mail, but you aren't going to implement the standard video mail.
And,
Yeah,
and we,
that negates the point of the RU spec.
I mean, do you remember when the iPhone came out and it was the first, version of visual voicemail, right? Before that, you had to dial into the system, press 1, and it was not a good experience, right? That's effectively the SIP call for video mail experience. That is just not ideal that we would have to potentially implement.
well, I'm all right with saying you have to be able to support an HTTPS browser interface for that. That's fine. But that's you still have the problem of notification. You have to have a way that every device knows that mail is waiting, so that the UI can be built. That when you push the button that says "Go get mail," it goes and follows that URI, and then you can go and build it. You can build that interface any way you want. I don't care what the UI is. I don't care if it's SIP or HTTP. That doesn't matter. What I care about is that the device knows that there's mail, so that it gives you that option.
So on iOS, you pretty much have to use a push notification for that. There's no
Yes, and we've said that.
registration, and so
Right.
The push notification for SIP is in the spec now.
Yeah, right. So
that's for
you
a
would.
call. I think that's for a call. That's not. There's an equivalent for message.
No, I don't. I think it works for both. I'm not so sure. I'm going to go look at it, but
Okay, that's another issue to investigate.
I will look at that. I'll report back on that one.
All right.
That's my list.
Notification for MWI, for event packages. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
That was my list. So all I've got is, you've got a lot of comments, great, but we've got to get them in and make decisions because we're done. I think we're done. So that's where I think we are. I'm willing to do as many revs as it takes. I'm willing to, like we agreed on a couple of things today, the change back to XCard. I will put that in. There'll be a 7 soon. And anything else we come up with that we agree to, I will expeditiously get them into the draft. But we're at the end now. I want to start running through the approval process.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe we could, make a call for working group, to start last call today. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but I think that we should start it before the next meeting.
And last call is is a note that you got to get your comments in now. It's not we're done and we're not changing anything. It's just it gives you a deadline for which comments have to be received. That's all it does.
Well, maybe we should do that then. Maybe we should pick a date when we're going to make a last call in order to give people a deadline.
No, I think that would be good. I think that'd be really good.
I mean, we still have issues and concerns that haven't been addressed. I don't know how that changes anything. So we're going to get you more details on some of these.
Yeah.
So the last call, I don't know the protocol there. I assume so. Something like you have to get all your issues in by this date, or for it's like speak now or forever hold your peace kind
Well,
of thing.
it's
Close to
sort
that.
of, it isn't that good because there's another one after that that's IETF wide. So
last
this is the working group last call, and we ask that working group members get all of their comments in, but in fact, you get to comment on the IETF last call, which happens after we resolve all the comments in working group last call. So you actually do get 2 bites at the apple, but we try hard to get you that working group members should get all of their comments in on working group last call, and we don't expect you to have more comments on IETF last call. That's for other people.
Yeah, the IETF last call is primarily there to allow people that don't participate in the work group a chance to raise, say something. Usually you don't want them doing that unless they've got some real expertise that and can raise an issue that's grave.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the working group last call is, says, if you're participating in this work group, speak now or forever hold your peace. And there's no deadline for finishing working group last call. So, but usually when we do that, we think we're close, and there may be some things to finish up, but it's not like we're going to massively revise the document some more. Yeah. So we don't really want to do it if we think there's going to be massive revisions to the document as a result of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it again. I just don't think I think there are a lot of issues, and we'll work to call those out in more detail. But, I don't think we're at the final draft yet. I haven't really heard from the other providers. It'd be good to get other kind of speak up on that if we can.
Is anybody else, any other provider on? I didn't look. Didn't look. No, I don't see anybody.
Yeah, so Alex and Chad.
No, I haven't seen anything in the chat. Well, again, everybody gets to put their comments in at last call, working group last call, and we hope that other people will participate. And again, it's specifics are the things that we really need. I mean, what do we want to change? What is the actual problem? We have processes for breaking disagreements where, one set of people thinks one thing and another set of people think something else. I got my chair hat now. We will use those processes to deal with a circumstance in which some people think one thing and other people think another thing. That is the rough consensus rules in the IETF. We would like to get what we like to do to run those processes with very specific things, not generalities. Like, I don't like this; it's too much work. We really prefer to have, well, this particular thing causes me a problem for this particular reason, and will cause this to happen if you do it. And so the more specific you can get, the more likely, well, the easier it will be to run those processes to deal with the some people think one way, some people think another way. If you raise an issue and everybody says, oh yeah, that's a real issue, and you know, or at least most people or almost everybody thinks it really is an issue and we really got to deal with it, then we just deal with it.
I saw Alex for a second. Were you going to say something, Alex? Oh, there he is. He's coming
Sorry.
back.
Just I try to unmute and it doesn't let me. But
Oh, okay, you
yeah,
got it.
thank you, Brian and Paul. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the expertise level, there definitely is a lot we can dig into. But we agreed as providers. Actually, this morning we had a brief meeting about it, and we said we would agree on the subjects that were on the slide of not done. So I think if we dig into them a little more and maybe come to a consensus, I know we agreed on the X card now, you know, and we can maybe put something better together.
That would be great. We're almost out of time. Well, we are out of time.
Yeah. So I said, I think we're not going to call working group last call now, but expect us to do it, you know, before the next meeting. Brian and I will consult on it. And
Yeah.
it'll happen on the list, I think.
Yes. Well, it always happens on the list, but yes.
Yeah. In the meantime, we really need those comments.
Yeah.
I just wanted
Okay.
to ask, I have tried to join the group before, and I just haven't been able to get the invitation. Is there
You don't
a
need an
special-
invitation. All you need to do is join the mailing list. That's it.
I have joined it. Yeah, I haven't.
If you're
Maybe
on the
I'll look
mailing
at it
list,
more.
if you're on the mailing list, you're in the group.
I'll dig in. Thank you, bro.
Okay. If you have a problem, email me. It's
Contact
easy to
us.
find my address, and I will be very glad to help you. Whatever, and that applies to everybody. If you're having trouble getting onto the list, it's easy. But if you're having trouble, let me know, and I will help.
And if you're having trouble finding somebody, you won't have any trouble finding me. There aren't very many with my name.
That's right. You can Google Paul. You can Google me. You'll find me. Yeah. All right. Anything else
Thank
before we're
you all.
done? Thank you for helping out. I appreciate your comments, all of you. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. See you later.
Bye.
Have a great night.